Wolf Pack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with a live update of my 2025 fantasy football rankings. Obviously, the NFL draft is now in the books, and there is a ton to process and digest. I've been thinking about it all weekend, collecting my notes, and I thought the most efficient and effective process to get that information to you would be just updating these rankings live. Dive into kind of how the sausage is made. You can hear my internal debates as I move people up and down. I'll rank the rookies live. I'll talk about the veterans that were impacted. You get it all. So it's probably going to be a pretty beefy stream. I'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And you can let me know how you feel. This is, of course, just prefacing a fully redraft / best ball type of show. I know there are some nuances between those two as well, but I'm thinking through these rankings from a 1 year perspective, not dynasty, not keeper leagues. This is strictly who do I think is going to be the best in 2025 and how does that play out in fantasy. So if you do want dynasty content, check out, we have a ball talk show with Tanner and CJ. They do a phenomenal job there discussing all of that. But this is going to be strictly for you 2025 drafters and how I see the values playing out. And if you enjoy at any point what you are hearing, that thumbs up button, the heart button on Twitter, all of that stuff helps us grow and continue to get out to more people, and so greatly appreciated. And if you have not played Best Ball, feel free to use these updates to help you dominate. They're launching Best Ball Mania today. It's Monday, the 28th. And ultimately, code RSJ can get you up to 1,000 in bonus bets to attack that and go for the $2 million prize. All righty, guys, let us start off here with the quarterback rankings. Like I said, I am going to ultimately go position by position. In terms of the quarterback position, I actually already did these rankings ahead of time, though, just to get a feel for it. And now I'll be just talking through some of those movements. The most notable being, as you can see here, Justin Fields up to quarterback 7. I'm not fully sold on that. We're going to keep looking through the rankings. I know there's a lot of risk associated with that, but we saw the ceiling again last year. Only 4 starts, a 32-point day on the docket, multiple rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns in the same game. And we talk about it every year in the draft guide in terms of the Konami code, the premium cheat code in all of fantasy, are quarterbacks that have those leg points added. If a quarterback's taken over 100 rush attempts or hit 500 yards across the last decade, they've been a top 10 quarterback in 15 of 16 times. It is the easiest cheat code to get. And Fields, again, you don't have to be good. We're talking like Tim Tebow was a top 6 quarterback, and it was the worst passer this NFL maybe has ever seen because of how valuable the ground points are. And Fields brings that to the table, and he's such a big riser because no quarterback competition added. The rumors the Jets might be interested in a day 2, day 3 signal caller to add some competition. No, they are fully committing to Fields for at least this season, which is a huge ringing endorsement. Then they add Manboy, beastly right tackle, to beef up a line that they've really been throwing first round after first round injection of talent at. Hopefully it ends up panning out. And you got Garrett Wilson. You got a good weapons cabinet. I thought Fields looked good. I thought he should never have been benched last year by the Steelers. You got the raw end of that deal. And ultimately, I think he's going to thrive. I really like him in New York as a fantasy fit. But you can kind of just see in general, if you're watching the stream, you're catching on the Fantasy Fullback Dive, your podcast, that I'm talking about a tier here that goes from quarterback 6, Baker Mayfield, all the way down to Trevor Lawrence, who we'll talk about as a riser, and myself. At quarterback 18, a humongous tier of I would accept these guys as my number 1 quarterback. I'll probably bump a few of these guys out as more high-end quarterback 2s, but really just the gut reaction was I'd be really totally fine with Drake May, with J.J. McCarthy, and even maybe Trevor Lawrence. Let's dive into him, why he's such a big riser. Travis Hunter, humongous addition here. Bashal Tootin, another very explosive rookie runner that is now joining here. And perhaps most importantly, Liam Cohen. We've talked about the big impact, but he really turned around the Bucs. Baker Mayfield having a career year under him, and coming Liam Cohen out of that Sean McVay tree, just creating those layup opportunities, really knowing how to attack every layer of the field to open up the other weapons throughout. He's a genius at it, and I am a full believer in him. The only reason Trevor Lawrence isn't higher, you got the weapons upgrade with Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas, I mean, insane. Then the explosive run game too. You got the coordinator upgrade, as good as you could ever ask for. I just don't know if I'm fully sold on him, and I think him and Caleb Williams kind of fall in that same bucket. Another riser, no doubt about it, in terms of just general outlook. Didn't rise in the rankings, though, as a result. But Ben Johnson, as good of a play caller as you could ask for. They also add Colston Loveland and Luther Burden in their top 2 picks, getting his kind of guys. Ben Johnson crafting that system around the weapons he wants when you already had DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. This is a loaded cabinet. And then more importantly, how they beefed up the line all offseason. They added another tackle in the draft. Caleb Williams has a humongous up arrow. The only issue is he actually that good? I know both these guys, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, coming in as highly, highly touted prospects. Don't fully buy what I've seen on the NFL field quite yet, which is the only reason neither one of them are in the top 10 right now. But they certainly are quarterbacks I would be happy to draft in 2025 and see how it pans out with quarterback 1. They're in that tier of quarterback 1s for me as of now, with the weapons, with the offensive coordinator upgrades. The only other notes, it looks like Jordan Love was knocked down. I think that was more so just because of how high I entered this process. I'm still super high on Jordan Love, even higher now that he has Matthew Golden there. I think the field's rushing upside really edges him out. I just bumped Bo Nix up because I love Bo Nix, and they're beefing up that weapons cabinet for him too. And so I bumped Jordan Love down just a little bit. But in reality, this whole tier, you see Justin Herbert maybe the biggest faller here. And they added Trey Harris, one of my favorite wide receiver prospects. Over 5 yards per route run is ungodly. The only Power 5 receiver to ever do that in the last decade, perhaps ever, if I'm not mistaken. I know the next closest was Devonta Smith, a stud, with 3.68 yards per route run from the outside. So I love the weapon addition for Herbert. I love Omarion Hampton. And that might be where the downgrade actually happens, is this offense is deadlier, but a lot more of it's flowing through the backfield when you have a weapon like Hampton. And it's also just more so to give these guys room to rise that I thought it had the meaningful additions. But again, anybody in this tier from 6 to 18. So I typically side on the cheaper side of this tier. The other guy getting an upgrade would be Drake May. Will Campbell saying he'd die for him. You love that offensive line getting beefed up. You needed to see it as a Patriots fan because we saw all the glimpses of greatness out of Drake May. I really do think he's going to be the next young stud. You have the mobility so he can be running around the place a bit. So Drake May getting a bump up as well as one of the real risers of this process. And then you just kind of, in terms of who else rose, CJ Stroud, it's hard to argue. Yeah, the line, they threw a few darts at it. I don't know that they meaningfully added, plus you lose Tunsil, so that seems bad. They do add those interesting Iowa State weapons. Loved both those guys in terms of Higgins and Noel. So weapons upgrades, some line stabs. He rose a couple spots, especially when you look at Dak Prescott, who they made legitimately 0 wide receiver picks in the draft. Despite losing Brandon Cooks, that's already embarrassing that Brandon Cooks is your number 2 weapon, and yet you still make no moves for Dak Prescott. I don't know what's happening there. I'm not a huge believer in Schottenheimer. I do think CeeDee Lamb is probably going to be fed 300 targets this season, though, so certainly not him. Michael Penix also fell kind of for those same reasons. No real weapon additions. They really attacked the defense in this draft, and rightfully so. I still like Penix fine. These are really, though, your quarterback 2s. If you draft a Trevor Lawrence and you want to back up to him, I do think Trevor Lawrence ultimately, just because we have not seen it, belongs in this tier. Maybe even J.J. McCarthy and Drake May as well. It's probably how I see this tier shaking out. But I really love McCarthy and that Kevin O'Connell system. So I don't know. I feel weird. Like maybe the tier cut is in this group here. And like Dak, Geno. Yeah, I think this might be the better way to organize this. Because now you're getting down to when you get to this Dak tier, like quarterback 2s I don't really want. Like I'm excited to have J.J. McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, but probably more so as my quarterback 2, Drake May as well. So that's how I'd probably rank these guys out there. And then, yeah, the only rookie to really discuss is Cam Ward, and not the most ideal weapons cabinet. Calvin Ridley is number 1. They took some good stabs, though, and I don't want to overjudge Brian Callahan for a Will Levis-led season. That's a pretty tough hand to be dealt. And so we just saw a couple seasons ago, we were endorsing this guy for making, Jake Browning, the backup to Joe Burrow. He was a top 12 quarterback under Callahan as the quarterback and offensive coordinator, quarterback coach. And that's really what got him the job in Tennessee. He goes and gets his guy in Cam Ward. I will judge him now if this does not pan out. But for now, I was excited about that offense. I'm still excited to see how it pans out. And that's why he lands Cam Ward right around Bryce Young, Penix, Geno. These quarterbacks, you really waited on the position, fine. They could be serviceable. But even most of these guys are likely to be on your waiver wires in redraft. It's more so best ball. You'll get some usable starts out of those guys. I believe that covers all of my quarterback risers followers. I guess the only other one to note, if you're drafting best ball wise, Jackson Dart not going to start the season behind Russell Wilson, but ultimately, they compare him to Josh Allen. That's why Brian Daboll wanted him, who of course worked with Josh Allen in Buffalo when he was the offensive coordinator. And we saw Josh Allen. I'm not saying Daboll was the skeleton key that unlocked Josh Allen. If Stephon Diggs had more to do with that. But at the same time, Daboll he talked about it, Josh Allen, how crucial Daboll and his aggressiveness were for him to develop. And so to have that comparison, that's meaningful. I would not just discount that. So yeah, that wraps up my quarterback risers and fallers. If you have any questions, we're going to move now to the running back position. Normally, I would be doing this live and just taking questions as we go, having some technical difficulties. So I'm just kind of recording it offline, posting it, but then you can then follow up with any questions on the YouTube video, on the Twitter post, and I'd be happy to. Or just find me at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter. I'm happy to answer anything there. But we will, as it loads, move to the running back position where there's a ton of movement to discuss. As I said, the live stream crashed mid-running back, so you'll see some movement. I bumped the rookies back down, though, so we'll chat through that. Let's load that up as we speak, though. All righty, and that has officially loaded. Got the water breaking. So let's dive into my updated 2025 running back rankings. As many of you know, this was known as a phenomenal, one of those generational running back classes. The prospects were top to bottom. I mean, Ashton Jeanty starting with one of the most supreme talents to enter the league in a decade. But even the depth of this class, it was bound to shake up the running back ranking landscape. Fortunately, we kind of come out with not a ton of crazy losers. We'll hit, Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, Jerome Ford, maybe a little bit of Tyrone Tracy falling, Cam Scatterbo going there. We're going to talk through all that. I think the most efficient and effective way to do that would be ranking the rookies and then talking about who's impacted in the kind of landslide effect of them landing where they land. And so I have all the rookies down here. I'm just going to kind of bump them up one at a time. I already started to move like Najee and a few guys, so we'll talk about that. But most of these guys are going to be placed live here with you. And if you're listening in the car, I'll just try to keep referencing what tier and number we are at. Ultimately here, Ashton Jeanty, running back 5, running back 4. Yep, that's where I have him. There's only Barkley, Robinson, and then Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of Ashton Jeanty in my 2025 fantasy football rankings, kicking off that next tier of high-end running back ones, just ahead of Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Achane is where I slide in Jeanty. And this is no slight to Henry. I understand ultimately that Henry, you could talk about the risk for this guy. Oh, he's over 30. He's the outlier of all outliers. And I am not worried about an absolute animal like Derrick Henry. I think he's going to be just fine here in 2025. It's more so just how much I love Ashton Jeanty and this landing spot. One, again, just a generational prospect. People nitpick that he didn't have a ton of receiving last year, but look at his receiving numbers, was among the best receiving college seasons of all time. He was, I believe, a converted receiver in high school as well. Either way, ridiculous talent. Going to an offense that had no running presence whatsoever, zero competition now coming for Ashton Jeanty. And he should go walk into 300-ish touches. Not the best offensive line, but they've made some good moves. And Geno Smith, certainly capable of keeping an offense on rhythm, dumping that ball off. I think Jeanty's in a great spot. Running back 4 in 2025. This is not, again, Dynasty where he'd be the number 1 overall prospect at the running back position, in my opinion. That's just how good he is. If you want him, though, you can see if you're watching live here, if you prefer the safety of a Josh Jacobs, a Derrick Henry, an Achane, and you kind of fall into that, well, I've seen it. Like if Jeanty does what Henry did, I'd be happy. Why not just take the guy who did it? Fine. I wouldn't fully fault you for that. I just think we could miss out on a just absurd rookie year. That's even more of a ceiling with a little less risk given he's more youthful and less tread on the tires so far. You'll notice I did bump up Christian McCaffrey as well. He ultimately is practicing fully in OTAs, and I'm one of those guys. I'm in on McCaffrey at the wrong times. I'm out on him at the wrong times. I never get him right. I don't really want him on my teams. That being said, I want to take a stance of like if he falls to me at the right price, I recognize I'm going to take the upside there. I just kind of take that lukewarm stance on him. But I am below for him. I just am bumping up as we speak. Chase Brown, a massive draft for him, and the fact that they've really added nobody. I'm just going to type in big winner here and know to come back to these ones, those updates. You can see it live at rotostreetjournal.com where these rankings live. But Chase Brown, they only add Taj Brooks as a rookie. So despite the visits from Judkins and Henderson, and you got to be kind of quivering there as a Chase Brown owner, what's going to happen here? Neither one join it. So you're getting the same guy, in my opinion. Sure, Brooks might mix in. An impressive guy. He had, 22 straight games and 95 yards. The only rookie in this class. I think the only guy to do that in like 10 years, something crazy like that. The guy can churn. He might get some touchdowns. That said, they've talked all offseason, the Bengals, about how they love Chase Brown, how he proved to them he can be their guy, their 3-down back, most impressed with his pass protection improvement. And the actions speak louder words, and they back up the words at this point, despite having those people come in for visits. It would have been a disaster for his fantasy value. We ultimately have a complete evasion of all of that. And so Chase Brown, huge winner. He leaps up into that quality running back 1 tier with the Jonathan Taylors, the Kyron Williams, just below those guys, just ahead of McCaffrey for me. And I think well worth a mid to late round 2. And in early drafts, he's been going in like late 3rd, early 4th because of that worries a rookie would be added in those pre-draft ones. I'm intrigued to see where his ADP shakes out. Anytime in round 3 would be a steal, in my opinion, for Chase Brown. But I do want to rank the rookies, and I'll kind of go as I see guys too. There's no real full structure here. We're talking rookies. We're talking veteran risers and falls at the same time. But I do want to, before I get to the next tier, rank Omarion Hampton, who I will believe lead off this next year. Yeah, I'd rather have him than Breece Hall. I'd rather have him than James Cook, and maybe even above McCaffrey. I'm so on the fence with McCaffrey. I'm not really on the fence. I hate him. He ruined my season in many leagues last year. Omarion Hampton, though, let's talk about how the number 2 clear prospect in this class, landing with the Chargers. Greg Roman's offense, top 10 in carries all 11 years he's called plays, number 3 in carries, and well over half of those. I believe it's 70% of those seasons. And I know it's a different different Chargers than the Ravens used to call and all that, but still, they love the run. They craft a great run game. They have a good line. They have Justin Herbert. It's a phenomenal spot. And yeah, Najee Harris was signed. A lot of people say, oh, it's a $9 million deal. It's up to $9 million. I believe the guaranteed money is about $4 million, which is nothing. And it entitles nothing to Najee Harris, who has looked like a slug. I know you can depend on him for volume and to eat carries like an innings eater, a good bullpen guy. But you've got your starter now in Omarion Hampton. And so Najee fell all the way to 36 for me. There'll be some bones for him in a big ground pie. There's going to be some slices. But ultimately, I think Omarion Hampton eats about 65 of those, all the receiving work as well. A phenomenal pass catcher. So explosive. I mean, we're talking like a 4.4 at 220. It's ridiculous athleticism. I'm a huge fan. Running back 13, kicking off that, I'd call this tier 3 with Breece Hall, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. Maybe Ken Walker. We'll see. Damian Martinez, a little sketchy addition there. But these guys, if I went, 0 RB and I'm in round 4, and I got, Omarion Hampton around 3 probably, right? I can accept them as my running back 1 if I've got 2 really good receivers, or I want elite quarterback and I end up with Breece Hall as my 1, fine. The more so desirable, would love them as my running back 2. But if they're my running back 1 and I like my earlier picks, I get it. I'd say Hampton kicks that tier off. And Alvin Kamara joins him with just Devin Neal added, who I love Devin Neal, but no real draft day. There's talk that Omarion Hampton might go there. So he dodged some big bullets. Joe Mixon dodged any real bullets. So he kind of stays in this tier of low-end running back 1, great running back 2s is how I see that tier playing out, and Hampton leading off. And one other rookie running back, I think, joins that tier. And again, this is redraft. I want to say a 1-year rental, but my 3rd ranked rookie running back ahead of Travion, ahead of Quinshon Judkins in terms of redraft value would be RJ Harvey. Now, the question comes down to, do I put him ahead or after James Cook? We're talking I make value holes before the draft starts, right? What are the best landing spots with the most right fantasy opportunity? And RJ Harvey, to me, landed in the number 1 value hole in terms of the Denver Broncos backfield. Sean Payton, 12 of 17 years calling plays, has had a top 2 in terms of total backfield fantasy points. He's been top 5 in terms of expected receiving points to running backs. And Harvey, that's why I'm like, I wonder what this fit is necessarily about. He's a good receiver. They didn't use him a ton over there in that role, but he can do it. And they said that in their interview about him. They're just gushed, the best vision of the class, the best pure runner. They're going to feed this guy. It's a centerpiece of a good offense with a good line. I love everything about RJ Harvey this year. So the high-end running back 2 ranking for me, it would be intriguing because he's kind of if you did those early best ball drafts right before, I did way too many of those, and you're kind of guessing that you draft rookies before they land. This was the nuts. Like he was going about pick 150 or so, and now he lands as a clear high-end running back 2, in my opinion. That was the pick you could have made. The best pick possible was RJ Harvey in the 150s. My guess is he rises to the 50s, like legitimately 100+ point swing, maybe even higher. And I'm here for it. So that's a guy I will be targeting heavily in these early best ball drafts. So he ranks high for me. Let's keep ranking these rookie running backs. So Travion Henderson, an interesting one, going to the Patriots. I'm a Pats fan, love the pick. So happy real life wise to have this guy on my team. Fantasy wise, I'm still going to like him. Don't get me wrong. I hope my, little bit of like questioning voice here. I still want this guy on my team. I'd want him more than Aaron Jones. I don't think I'd want him in the right spots. I would have taken him above, he could have ranked Roehampton ranks if he went to the Chargers, right? He's that good of a player. The Patriots, just not quite there. I love what they did on the draft. That line is a few pieces away from being competent. I love Drake May. I like Josh McDaniels. The guy, not as a head coach, but as a play caller, think all those upgrades are meaningful. And they're talking about it's going to be an open competition. And if that's actually the case, well, Henderson should spank Ramondre Stevenson and send that ass to the locker room. So we'll see if that actually plays out. I did bump. And the thing with Ramondre, big fumbler, right? And we know Mike Vrabel is not going to tolerate that. So I'm not even that worried about a committee. I know McDaniels does like his committees. You could see the LeGarrette Blount role for Ramondre where he's just eating touchdowns of those Patriots of old teams. And I think that caps Henderson just a tad. And so that's where he doesn't rank quite like a Omarion Hampton for me this year in redraft. And if I'm drafting Dynasty, I know this isn't a Dynasty show, but probably a top 5 overall Dynasty pick. Great long-term outlook as this offense continues to improve, as the line continues to improve. Just for this year, he's sliding as like my running back 23, a low-end running back 1. He'll probably below Judkins, who does enter a situation. Let's rank him, is his old teammate from Ohio State. Judkins surprisingly goes before Travion Henderson's, and the Browns, a surprisingly sexy landing spot. Stefanski has a great run game, that zone scheme, Kubiak inspired. Love it. Dating back to the Vikings, Dalvin Cook was a beast in this system. And they talked about the GM saying multiple times using the word bell cow. What do we like more than running backs that are bell cows? Nothing in life. The true great joy there is. And so Judkins, bell cow, good offensive line there in Cleveland. You take 10 to 15 stabs at quarterback, apparently. You got to hope one of them pans out, right? And immediately you got a 20 carry back and a good run offense probably is the focal point, because even whoever pans out, even if it's Joe Flacco, the dig and dunk would be great. The one thing, though, and maybe I don't want him, he's certainly not going to be in the tier with like the Ken Walkers, Montgomery, Chuba. He's probably that next tier with Travion, because they add another guy I like a lot in Dylan Sampson. Some people tweeting out the better runner there. So why don't we just talk about Sampson real quick? And then we'll get to Jerome Ford too. I think Sampson's way better than Jerome Ford. I think he does everything Jerome Ford does as a receiver, everything. So I like Dylan Sampson. I think he's going to clearly be if they're doing like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt thing, he'd be like a lesser Kareem Hunt at that point. And so, I have Rashad White. I'd rather have Dylan Sampson. I'd rather have Najee Harris though. So, and Blake Corum's going to fall. They draft Jarquez Hunter, who overtakes him. And then Jerome Ford just becomes a nothing. We'll send him down to the Ty Chandler basement territory and sort those shit bums out later. But pardon the language. And then we move on over to Caleb Johnson, who I would also rank right alongside these guys, landing with the Vikings. So, and for a guy that can just eat carries, he's just like the prototypical Mike Tomlin, feed me 30 times. So I want him over Jalen Warren. And Warren does fall a little bit. We knew they were going to add somebody. We didn't know we knew they didn't have a pick till the third round, rather. And so we were hopeful that, hey, maybe by round 3, it's nothing overly scary. Maybe it's Damian Martinez. Maybe it's Jordan James. No, it's Caleb Johnson, my running back 5, a phenomenal prospect. Should have no problem. And I like Warren, a good, efficient runner, good receiver, great pass protector. He's going to have a role. And so he doesn't I'm just going to kind of make this new tier here because I know Warren does not belong in the same tier as Travion, as Quinshawn, as Caleb Johnson. But he's not worthless because of how efficient he is, but he's going to be in this Ramondre, this Najee, the guys that are running back 2s that could be okay. Pollard, I'm going to just kind of start filling this tier in. You got to think he's a bit of a rise. I know the down again because rookies are landing ahead of him. But ultimately, just Khalil Mullins, who will eat some touchdowns, big body, but he could have had a real bomb dropped on him, and he didn't. I would say, I don't know if he joins that tier, but like a similar winner in that sense of like dodged any meaningful competition, like just Ja'Cory Crockett, I believe is the guy's name, added. So Brian Robinson comes out of here, a winner. The guy that's going to jump into this tier for me, though, and dare I say above Henderson, as of right now, is DeAndre Swift, maybe the single biggest like veteran running back winner. Maybe, definitely was. Bears only draft a guy in round 7. Which name I honestly forget. I'll recognize this guy, Kyle Manan guy. I don't know much about him. Again, I study the rookies. I love Dynasty. I am more of a redraft guy. And so I have not dug deep into, I know Jadon Blue very well. I loved him in best ball. So I know some of these guys. I'm not well versed in Kyle Manan guy quite yet. So I'll study up. Probably a worthwhile sleeper stab, given that Swift is the only back right now in this offense. Roschon, I don't believe in at all. And we know Ben Johnson in the past. Everybody assumed that Swift would be getting kicked to the curb. They did have a ton of backs coming in, and Travion and Jenkins, but I guess nobody they liked fell to the right price for him. And so ultimately Swift comes out as a huge winner. Ben Johnson's run scheme has been marvelous these last few years. And so, yeah, top quality running back 2 tier with those Judkins, Hendersons. I think Swift belongs right there. He's been going in the 110, 120s in these early pre-draft best balls. Should be a clear-cut riser after this. So, yeah, big fan there. I think he absolutely joins the tier. And let's get back to the rookies and how they're impacting it. So then Cam Scatterby, the last guy that I see like pretty much a good shot to take over as the starter as early as week 1. And that's where Tyron Tracy, a little bit of a faller here in this draft as well. So I'm going to put Scatterby like right up there with the Jalen Warrens because I do think I'm a huge Scatterby guy. Maybe I'm just a sucker for that college football playoff run. But you look at the game logs, and it's like every game was 3 touchdowns and 200 total yards. And the dude is just the ultimate like monster. And they're trying to become a tougher, more physical team. And like that's how you do it. It's Cam Scatterby. So I think I actually would have him ahead of Tracy in my early rankings here. And I think Scatterby takes over. That being said, I like Tracy. He was like a savior for me in many leagues at the waiver wire last year. So I don't want to completely dismiss him. But to me, he's kind of like the Jalen Warren to Cam Scatterby and Caleb Johnson. That's, again, a common trend with this running back class, too. It's that good that like these 3rd round, 4th round picks that normally day 3, are you really going to like these guys? But yeah, I am. That's how good this class is. And so I like Cam Scatterby there ahead of Tracy. And so that makes Tracy one of the bigger follows. I love Bashal Tutin. I like him over Travis Etienne. Wouldn't be shocked to see Etienne traded at this point. But we're talking, 4.29 fastest time at the combine for Bashal Tutin. This Chris Johnson comps coming out like a sturdy runner too. He's not just a speedster that you hit him and he's dinged up. He was a beast. He was a workhorse. And so I'd rather have Bashal Tutin on my teams than Tyron Tracy, than Jalen Warren. Clearly Liam Cohen, you had limited capital after you traded away so much to get Travis Hunter. Yeah. Give me Bashal Tutin any day of the week. And an offense with a play caller that used, think about Bucky Irving's breakout, Rashad White in the receiving game. You get Tutin in space, he's going to be deadly. And that's exactly what Liam Cohen is going to do. So I'm a big fan of Bashal Tutin landing here. I'm starting to more in fantasy. I talked about this with CJ and Tanner yesterday on their Ball Talk show when we broke down the rookie winners and losers in general, just from a dynasty perspective. I'm starting to buy more in on coordinators and play callers. And I've always, I think more so than most, maybe to a fault at a lot of times, I've loved digging into past play calling tendencies and how do players compare to how this guy used that. I've always done that. It's always been a huge part of my process. But really, like banking on, like, I buy this play caller. This is a guy I believe in. And it might not be because he has this exact fit. Like, I just know he's smart. I know he knows how to get mismatches. And so, yeah, he didn't have a Bayshall Tootin. He didn't have a runner with a 4.3 speed. So I don't have a comparison, but I just know he's going to use his guys well in every facet, from receivers to running backs. So I really like Bayshall Tootin. In fact, like, gut call, like, I think he's going to light it up. I love him in Dynasty. I almost want him in that Travion Henderson tier for redraft, but I want to see what, if Etienne gets moved, or they're just going to be like a three-headed mess. There was some hope pre-draft that Zach Charbonnet would get moved, the premier handcuff in fantasy, but doesn't get traded. Had he gotten traded, he would have been an absolute steal where he's going. Let's get these last rookies kind of ranked, because there are a handful more I want to talk about. Take a quick pause and then get to the wide receivers. But I would say the next rookie that I would have ranked is Jadon Blue, landing with Dallas. Smaller guy out of Texas, but as pro day, you got to take a grain of salt. I get it, but 4.25, even faster than Tootin. Ran a 4.38 at the combine with a hammy thing going on. And in terms of like leading the class, yards, percent of yards after contact per attempt, like smaller guy that really churns through contact really well. They draft Phil Maffa, a big body, to kind of make their Thunder Lightning or pair him with Javonte Williams. But I see Jadon Blue guy just outplaying everybody in this backfield and becoming, you can't ride him for 20 carries. He would break down. But if you told me he got 15 electric touches a week, I can buy into that. So I love Jadon Blue. One of the big, I was taking him in the 220s or so in those early pre-draft best ball drafts, just as hopefully he's an explosive complement to somebody. I didn't expect Dallas to be that. I thought they were going to take DJ Giddens. He was still available, and that shows you how much they liked this Jadon Blue prospect, and the fastest running back if you go by pro day times in a wide open Cowboys offense, a solid enough line. They really attacked it with another guard, Booker there. So I love Jadon Blue. He's a guy that I am going to be trying to hammer in these early drafts before his price gets too crazy. And I'm still going to probably take him wherever he ends up being, because I'm definitely high on him. Devin Neal, I hate that he fell all the way to round 6, but I love where he landed. Kendre Miller, no thank you. Alvin Kamara, older. I don't think that Devin Neal necessarily supplants him, but I think he fits into that big back role in a Kellen Moore offense quite well. So I like Devin Neal. I think the landing spot, despite the lack of draft capital, you hear me keep saying that. Normally, it's a day, round 6 running back. Don't even think about it. I think Devin Neal in most classes would have been like a top round 3 overall pick. I love this guy. And I think, Kendra, you can see way down. No thanks. Since here, McCormick, see you later. Ashton Genty's arrived here. I won't go through every single rookie because most of these guys are just going to be kind of waiver wire fodder. But ultimately, we talked about Manungai in Chicago, wide open. They thrive on competition there, and I could see him beating out Roschon for the big back. And Swift always has his injuries, so that's like a sleeper to get to know. I'm just going to kind of bump these guys up. DJ Giddens unfortunately landed as more of a handcuff, as did Jordan James, but we know the injury concerns for Christian McCaffrey, and we know them for Taylor too. So a premier handcuff, DJ Giddens, was really hoping he'd be a starter. Martinez lands behind Charbonnet and Walker. Maybe they are going to trade one because they have this guy now, but you can't touch him. I do think Ollie Gordon in Miami, given he's just the only big back they have, he could eat some carries in a run game that we were always targeting, always going after. We should still be going after. Raheem Mostert had the most touchdowns in the NFL just 2 seasons ago. That could be Ollie Gordon. So Ollie Gordon, somebody, let's rank him because I think he's more intriguing. And the more I think about it, somebody that we have to at least consider, give me him over Ray Davis. And maybe this frees up Achane to go outside a bit more, do what he does best. So I dig that. And we talked about Taj Brooks, a good spot. I prefer him to Zach Moss, even though Chase Brown's the real winner there. I don't see another. The one other thing I would mention is Jarquez Hunter, I believe, becomes the immediate handcuff there, and that's why Blake Corum is going to fall. So let's talk about a couple running back 2s that were. I'm just going to pull up my notes here on running back winners and losers as veterans now. I don't think there's any more rookies we really need to talk about. But in terms of veterans, just guys that you could have fallen that won't are guys I'll just kind of start at the top here. There were a lot of veterans that you could see taking a hit, and One of them I was sneaky worried about was Josh Jacobs, given LaFleur's desire to use a committee. We did not inject any talent, and that does then raise up a guy that I drafted way too much. So I'm trying not to let like last year's sins misguide this year. I think there's still upside to Marshawn Lloyd, a very explosive guy. The fact that they make no moves to the position, they talked about, like, yeah, we felt comfortable because we want to see what we can get out of Marshawn Lloyd. Yeah, injury ridden all last year, and maybe that's going to be the story of his career, and maybe it's not. So I actually think Marshawn Lloyd emerges as a winner. Another subtle, like, I don't know if we started talking about James Cook yet, but in a really deep running back class, with him threatening to hold out, you'd think the team would make a move at running back, and they decide no. We are just going to stay pat, maybe a sign of good faith that, hey, we're going to work with you, James. You're our guy, because this would have been a great class to dip into. So I think you're coming off a 20-touchdown season. James Cook is still in great spot, and it does raise up for me Ray Davis. Yeah, the reason I wasn't drafting him at all was I thought any rookie could just come in here and take that number 2 role, but I liked what I saw from Ray Davis. I didn't necessarily think he should lose that gig, but this running back talent in this class is so high, but he leaves the draft relatively unscathed. And so similar to Marshawn Lloyd, similar to some of these other number 2s, another riser, Trey Benson, one of those, James Conner, there could have been some competition added. And so James Conner, he gets a nice little bump up here. So undervalued year in and year out. Part of me wants to even just kind of break this into like this tier here. It does feel like there's a drop at like Walker, Montgomery, Chuba, but I love that the run game scheme with Kubiak for Walker too. So we'll kind of call this a tier of just like running back 2s that could be my running back 1. I think I'm a little too low on Chuba after what he did last year. And, they add Trevor Etienne. He's a tool. I don't know why I said that, but like, he's not a guy that I think is a threat to Chuba at all. He's speedy, maybe gets a few dink and dunks, but Chuba was a beast last year. So I think that was fine. It was more so like, we don't trust Brooks to come back. So we need some depth, in my opinion. Jordan Mason, who was a winner is Isaiah Pacheco. There is a rookie, Brashard Smith, who I do want to rank because I think he's going to have some real value as a pass catcher, converted wide receiver, SMU, real speedy. But they did not add a Scatterbo. They did not add a big back that could take over the touchdowns. They did re-sign Kareem Hunt, who overtook for Pacheco. So I'm not going to go too crazy on Pacheco. But I do consider him a winner. I'd probably rather have Scatterbo, with my assumption that Scatterbo becomes the number 1 runner there. But Pacheco could rebound. There was all the talk in the world, and I was buying into it as a 3rd rounder in redraft last year of him taking on more receiving, and he was their key to their playoff run, and they wanted to reward him. Alrighty. And so to wrap up the running back risers, fallers, I do again believe in Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne losing to Bashal Tutin here. So they are fallers. At this point, they've fallen quite a bit. We did mention Trey Benson. It says down 3, but he was a riser relative to where now that you have all these rookies ahead of him, he ended up rising 10 spots ahead of where I had him previously ranked. Ray Davis falling in that boat as well. I'm just going to cut this tier here at Quorum, a big faller, because again, they drafted Jarquez Hunter and talked about him like he was a true wide receiver 1. So he is legit, or running back 1 rather. He is legit. And so I like Jarquez Hunter a lot. Brashard Smith, another rookie that I'm going to really like. In terms of veterans, though, I believe that it will still have to see where J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, a couple more guys to land and ultimately wrap up the running back landscape. The only other mention I'll give, and I guess you have to bump him up a little bit, would be Javonte Williams. And so I'm going to just find him. You think the Cowboys are going to add a early running back, and he's got every access right now to be that big back role. Maybe he ends up regaining some of that back in the day. I loved Javonte Williams, that explosion he had before he was a rookie during his rookie season, and then ultimately lost it due to that injury. Could regain that. And so like over a Trey Benson, sure. Over a Ramondre, probably is where I would go with Javonte, a riser, probably over Tajay Spears, who now has Khalil Mullings to deal with, certainly ahead of Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. So Javonte is a riser for sure. I mentioned I'd rather have Jadon Blue. I think he could become the more of the focal point and certainly do more with his touches either way. But you can't pretend like Javonte isn't a riser after they failed to address it. So we'll see what happens with Dobbins and Nick Chubb. But really for now, this is probably a good picture of the running back landscape. I'll, of course, go through and pick out other pieces. We'll now move to wide receiver. While it's loading, I'm going to take some water. All righty. And officially, we are now on the wide receiver position, updating the wide receiver rankings after the 2025 draft. Now, it's not as crazy as when you have the rookie running backs that come in and make those immediate impacts right away, stealing jobs. This was not a receiver class that could nearly have that level of impact. That being said, there are still guys that you could want to invest in that landed in some great spots in terms of rookies. And there are some veterans that are going to go up and down based on who was or was not added. So let's dive right in. I do think Travis Hunter is the #1 rookie in this class for wide receivers. Landing with the Jags was the best spot. I was assuming he's going to go to Cleveland, was worried about that, but they've already said he's going to play offense. This is one of the most explosive weapons out there. So immediately Travis Hunter right by my top 20 to 24 wide receivers, a high-end wide receiver too, in my opinion. Now, will he actually end up ahead of Addison, Worthy? I don't know. I really think so. That's how much I love this player. It's how much I love Liam Cohen. It's how much this team surrendered to go and get Travis Hunter. You think about Brian Thomas and how he's going to clear out space, and then Travis Hunter's going to clear out space for him. It's going to be a nightmare to defend these guys. We just need Trevor Lawrence to come through. If I was confident in Trevor Lawrence coming through, we just saw see Chris Godwin and Mike Evans be top 10 wide receivers in points per game in this scheme. And I think these two, Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, are even more explosive. And so we really just need Trevor Lawrence to come through. But I am going to be in love with Travis Hunter. Whether he's at the bottom of this tier with like JMO, probably below JMO, probably below Devonta. But he's going to be in this tier of like explosive wide receivers who I want. So, I showed as high as I could potentially get on him. And the reason I probably jumped there was because Godwin is a faller to me. And we'll talk about Egbuka in a second. But let's talk about Tet, who was, in my early ideas, the #1 receiver in this class for fantasy. But again, the Jags and Liam Cohen coming out to get Travis Hunter has changed my opinion. But I still love Tet. I still think he is going to be a quality fantasy producer in that kind of quality wide receiver 2 range. I don't fully buy into Bryce Young quite yet, and he's a little less explosive and a little less of a separator is Tet, which I think you need to be. But that being said, Bryce Young apparently vouched for him, really wanted this big body. That he's a smooth athlete. I do really like Tet. I think the Drake London comps are fair, and so he could absorb. He's probably going to be what they wanted Leggett to be from the jump, and I'm a fan of that. I think Tet is legit. So I'd rather have him, than Chris Olave and all the injury concerns. Debo is the #2 to Terry. Tet slides in kind of right there for me. I do think Juwan Jennings a big winner of this draft as well. No major moves made at wide receiver. A dude averaging 17 points per game last year, had a 45-point day. Elite ceiling for sure. Matthew Golden, elite speed. The first time the Packers have drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2002, as you all have probably heard. And we'll see. I don't fully love the prospect. I think why did you only really perform for a couple games if you're that great? But the speed is there. He was jacked up. A lot of good rave reviews from coaches. And I think Quinn Ewers is just trash. So maybe that's the issue as well. There's a lot of mouths there in terms of Jaden Reed, who I still love Jaden Reed. And he falls a little bit here. I'm gonna kind of cut this tier off at Ayuk, who might miss half the season, so he's falling right now. Ricky Pearsall, meanwhile, getting bumped up. But Golden could take over for Jaden Reed. He got drafted that high. I think Reed is the better player. We've already seen it, and maybe this actually opens up some more space for Reed. So I don't think he's a huge loser, but maybe just falls to the bottom of that tier of explosive wide receiver 3s, fine wide receiver 2s. I do believe Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, though, and we're talking about, for those audio listeners, wide receivers 30 to 37, kind of that. Again, I'm fine with him as my 2, would love him as my 3 wide receivers, just below the Chris Godwin, Jamison Williams, Devonta Smith, and now Travis Hunter tier. That's where I slide in Tet. That's where we kind of see the fallout of Matthew Golden, who's a tier below them. I think he's going to kind of come in right around. I am bumping Ayuk down with these negative reports. So that has Golden coming around wide receiver 42. I think we got to keep Shakir and Ridley above him, both winners from the draft, a quarterback upgrade for Ridley. No real competition until round 7 added for Shakir. So big votes of confidence for them. I think Golden slides in just below them. And George Pickens, I only kind of had him high because I was hoping he's going to get traded. Who's their quarterback going to be? And can he sustain Pickens and DK Metcalf? So for right now, I'm not going to touch Pickens. Other winners for veterans do include Jerry Jeudy, who avoids Travis Hunter coming in. So he gets a little bit of a bump up. You got Joe Flacco buoying the floor a little bit. Cedric Tillman, again, don't love Cedric Tillman, but he's got to be considered a winner here. And I actually had not updated these with Stephon Diggs to the Pats. It's been over a month having that new baby. It's good stuff. But it's I'm going to have Stephon Diggs. I'll do Kyle Williams right after him, too. I do have Diggs ahead of Shakir. I think the guy can still ball. I thought he looked great when he was healthy last year. And I think he'll be Drake May's number 1. But Kyle Williams does land in a phenomenal spot. So he's going to be right on the fringe of my top 50. Jalen McMillan does fall quite a bit now. Let's get to Igbukah. He's like the next rookie kind of lingering here. But you can see he's even low on Fantasy Pros now because he lands in a terrible redraft spot. Ultimately, you got Mike Evans in Tampa Bay for Igbukah. Love the guy out of Ohio State, the all-time leading receiver there, but you have to contend with Chris Godwin in the slot. You have to contend with Jalen McMillan, who I loved out of the slot. I don't love him anymore because clearly if you go for Igbukah, a similar skill set, you must not have been satisfied with what McMillan did, even though he was a top 12 wide receiver when Godwin went down. Unbelievable. So it's not a great redraft spot for Igbukah. He's going to probably be right around this wide receiver 50-ish range, like the Marvin Mims. I honestly don't even. I'd rather have some of these guys. Christian Kirk a faller with Jaden Higgins coming in, potentially just better right from the jump. But let's get to Luther Burden, who I do really like, and I think this impacts DJ Moore and Roma Dunze a bit. So I'm going to slide Luther Burden right here, kind of in that wide receiver 45, the same tier as a Dunze, who was not handpicked by this team. They've already come out and said competition is going to be paramount in this offense. I like Odunze. I still am not giving up on the prospect, but he didn't show a ton this last year. And Luther Burden's tailor-made for that slot role that Ben Johnson so craves. And so Luther Burden has among the highest ceilings of all these rookie receivers if he does become Ben Johnson's slot guy. So in Dynasty, I like the boom bust here. But there's a lot of bust potential too because he's facing DJ Moore and Rome, two very good talents and not a guarantee to be better than them. But he was handpicked by Ben Johnson, this wonder kid, great coordinator, and he is tailor-made. They cited Yak, which is all they want to do is generate those Yak opportunities for these slot receivers. So, yeah, I'm a big fan there of Luther Burden, slotting into my top 50 wide receivers, a wide receiver 3 with a ton of upside, somebody I can get behind. In terms of the other rookies, Jack Betch landing with the Raiders, and yes, you have Jacoby Myers, who will be the wide receiver 1, a little bit of a bump up probably for him even, given they didn't go with Tet or a Travis, somebody that could take over the 1. So Jacoby Myers is similar to Shakir in that sense. Just they make a move, but they get the only other rookie receiver I really want to talk about here is Trey Harris. Love this guy. I alluded to him when we talk about running backs. Ultimately, older prospects, sure, but well over 5 yards per route run, including exclusively from the outside as well. The next closest guy in the last decade is Devonta Smith with 3.68 yards per route run. So an absolute efficiency beast. Lands in a great spot with the cannon-armed Justin Herbert. I am a huge fan of Trey Harris, the player. I'm a huge fan of the landing spot. I think Quentin Johnson, this completely murders him, and he just crumbles from here. And Trey Harris is right up there with my top 50 wide receivers in that upside wide receiver tier alongside the Luther Burdens, the George Pickens, the Brandon Ayuk's. I'd rather have Trey Harris than Josh Downs, probably over Cooper Kupp at this point of their careers. Maybe that's bold. I'll bump him below Darnell Mooney, another winner of this draft with the Falcons adding nobody. But he's in that tier. He's in the bottom of that tier of the Diggs, the Adunzes, the Goldens. That's how highly I think of Trey Harris. I guess I'll have him kick off the next tier because it is Cooper Kupp right there next to him. Burden, who, if he pans out, is going to pan out in a much bigger way. But still, big fan of Trey Harris. Definitely in that upside wide receiver 3. In most redrafts, you're probably going to be talking about your last couple rounds. More upside than Jack Betch, more upside than even Marvin Mims, who I love. I think that's probably right where I draw that line. Marvin Mims, Trey Harris. I'd rather have him than Michael Pittman. I'll put Kyle Williams just ahead of Jack Betch, though, because he, I think Diggs is the number one. Wouldn't shock me, though, Kyle Williams, who drew Steve Smith comparisons from Steve Smith himself, ends up being the number one. That wouldn't shock me at all. But that's where you're going to see some of those rookies I love. And that's how I love attacking redraft, too, is hitting this high upside. If they suck, you just cut them. No harm, no foul. Best ball, you do want to swing for these fences and try to get these, but it's harder to absorb the losses always. So you want to have a mix. I think they call them, the best ball minds call it the chaperones. You have to have a Cedric Tillman, a riser, after they, again, don't add really anybody. Keenan Allen still hasn't been signed, so I'm just going to bump him down until we know where he's going. And then, again, Quentin Johnson, a big faller, because I think Trey Harris just plays that role and plays it better, so he keeps it. I think Jalen McMillan, a good faller. Because I think Ibuka is just always going to be ahead of him. And the upside, the contingency upside now takes a hit. A huge faller there. And so those were really the only rookies. Like Jaden Higgins, where does he slide in? Let's find out. I do think he's above Christian Kirk. I think he's more talented. We're talking size, speed, freak. But he's not a guarantee. So I put him like above Kirk. I'm going to bump down Ibuka again because it's just so crowded there. And so, I have Higgins just below Trey Harris, Kyle Williams in redraft. Those two have better paths, I'd say. Better paths, I'd say, than Higgins has to being that true number one. You're contending with Nico Collins. So, like, the ceiling is just capped there.